This is a gorilla. Your folks are both gorillas. You are a gorilla.
They propose revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Hello and welcome everybody to another reading of Code Word Barbelon on this Saturday Sabbath day, July 21st, 2018. And I am joined again here with Michael and Jörg from Belgium and Michael from Germany. And we are on page 512 of the chapter, The Evidence Demands a Verdict. Now, this is the very last chapter of the book. And Jörg and I have been cruising right along until now, and we're only doing like one recording a week, but here we are. Welcome.
Well, Brett, we are at least doing, as far as I can remember, 2 recordings last week. We did Saturday and Sunday.
All right.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, Michael is back with us, who had other things to attend to the last weeks, and it's glad to welcome him back to our readings here. Welcome, Michael, in Germany, where it is about 100 and some degrees.
Yeah. Hi, Jörg. Hi, Brett. Nice to be there with you. So I'm very busy the last few weeks, and my holidays have been cancelled also. So I'm very busy at the moment, but I was very much looking forward to get another reading from Code Word Barbelon. I think we're doing well because it's just not the pace. It's just that you are going very carefully throughout this book. And yes, I very much appreciate it.
Okay, and we appreciate that you're back with us. So I'm going back into the reading on page 512, starting on the second paragraph, going back one paragraph for continuity's sakes. And I just want to ask Brett, are you all right with checking the Bible verses that we are going to read here?
Yes, sir. Yeah? I'm on it.
Because I already see on the next page, 2 Thessalonians 2:7, and I don't think that he is making the point that is so important in that verse, but we will see when we get there. Okay, so I can at least rely on my brothers to help me with this reading a little bit in this regard. Wonderful to come back and start finishing this book, which I'm sure will not happen today, but one of the next sessions we will start in the continuation of finishing this book, and then of course we will take a little break, and then we will have Code Word Barbelon Part 2, which is then called The Antichrist is a Woman, Alive and Well. But before we go into that, on page 512 the author says, on page 132 of his book, speaking of Cardinal Newman, Essays Critical and Historical, Cardinal Newman states, quote, "The reign of Antichrist was to be over the earth," unquote. However, the Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 states more correctly that Antichrist will not only rule over the earth as a king or as a prince, but in a church as well. Paul explicitly refers to Antichrist as, quote, that man, unquote, who, quote, sitteth in the temple of God, i.e., over church, and exalteth himself above all that is called God, even showing himself that he is God, unquote. Well, he sitteth in the temple of God, i.e., a church. I do not agree, because we are the living temple of the living God. Our bodies are, not a church. But speaking of the church of Jesus Christ, that is of course correct when you consider the body of Jesus Christ on this earth, the real, true, Bible-believing Christians, and out of that quote-unquote congregation, the Antichrist will come. When you understand it this way, I sign for that. The Pope clearly fits this bill. Now, let me see if I close that down. No, I didn't close that down. I'm going to go to another reading in a few minutes to make a very important point, because we are speaking about the Antichrist here. Antichrist Nicholas said concerning the claim of the popes to universal power, quote, I am in all and above all. The things that I do be said not to be done of man, but of God. What do you make of me, but God? If prelates of the church be called of Constantine for gods, I then, being above all prelates, seem by this reason to be above all gods, unquote. This exactly fulfills 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Brett, do you have those verses at hand? Could you,
right in front
could
of
you
me
please read them to us?
2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And that's verse 4 right there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
Now, I have had a little discussion with Nicholas from Presence of God Ministry in the week, because he put out a very interesting book about the Antichrist. And I mean, Nicholas, even though that he is an quote-unquote SDR, a Seventh-day Remnant, we have the same perception about who the Antichrist is. There is no disturbance in it. But in his video, again, he was going in the 1260-day year prophecy. And of course, he teaches the 538 through 1798. And I told him in my comment that he should do his homework and do a little bit history research and consider the time of Emperor Phocas in 606, who gave the power to Pope Boniface III, actually then becoming the very first pope. And that he could even read that in the annals of the Roman Catholic Church, because, and this is the one that I'm going to read to you here, the Roman Catholics are affirming that the papacy is the Antichrist. Yeah, the Roman Catholic Church itself does it. And how does it do it? Well, Pope Gregory the Great, who was the predecessor of Pope Boniface III, who I just mentioned, who reigned between, or lived between 540 to 604, yeah, so that's 2 years before 606 Boniface III was made the first pope. In his letter to Emperor Mauritius, the one who was killed by Emperor Phocas, who then gave the power to the pope, in Book 4, letter 30, this Pope Gregory the Great says, quote, moreover, I say confidently that anyone calling himself universal priest or desires to be so called shows himself by this self-exaltation to be the forerunner to the Antichrist, because by this display of pride he sets himself superior to others, unquote. Isn't that an interesting sentence Pope Gregory the Great wrote, who is actually Bishop Gregory the Great of Rome, because he was not a pope, he was just a bishop of Rome, as all quote-unquote popes were until 606, when Emperor Phocas gave the power to Pope Boniface VIII, and he became the very first pope. All the popes before them were only bishops of Rome. He says, he shows himself by this self-exaltation. Why is this a very important part of this quote that Gregory the Great writes here? This self-exaltation reminds me of Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 14, when we speak about the fall of Lucifer, who exalts himself above the stars of God, right?
Right.
This self-exaltation. And then he continues to say, to be the forerunner of Antichrist, because by this display of pride, that's exactly what brings Satan and Lucifer into fall in heaven. Pride. The Bible says, you were the most wonderful angel until iniquity was found in you. And what was his iniquity? Pride and self-exaltation. Now,
Yeah,
I don't think that you have any more powerful quotes than this one to understand that the Pope was not from 538, as the SDA teaches, and as the current teaching is in this world, but that is from 606 and then, of course, until 1866, where the French troops, during the war, where Germany later came out as the Second Reich in 1871, we had the battle at Königgrätz in the year 1866. And during that battle, the French, who had sent protecting troops to the Vatican, took away these protecting troops because they could not leave. They had to reinforce their military, and they left the Vatican without any protection. And therefore, the Italians, who also wanted to have Venice, went into there and made it part of the Republic, and by that took away the temporal power of the Pope. But that's just a little thing to think for yourself and do your own research, and do not accept everything that everybody on the internet only repeats and repeats and repeats, but see that you have also alternative, a quote-unquote alternative truth, or at least dates that match the same prophecy with other dates than what everybody else in the internet teaches. But Michael, you wanted to leave a comment here.
Yes, as I find that the Pope in Rome is just the vicar of the Antichrist. It's just that they have turned everything in reverse. So, for example, if Peter was crucified upside down, you see that totally fits in my humble understanding that this would be the role model for the Roman Catholic Church, because the Pope is the vicar of Antichrist. And so if I like to understand the Roman Catholic Church very well, then I have to turn things around. And then I come to the conclusion that, that it's not so hard to get on their tracks. That was my remark.
Yeah, it's easy. In easy words, Michael, what you are saying, take everything that the Bible says, turn it 180 degrees around, and you have everything the Antichrist says.
Yeah.
That's what I'm teaching since years already. Yeah, you have been listening well, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I needed several languages to adapt to that.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but now continue reading in this book. But I just thought that was a very interesting little note I could give to the reading today by reading to you this quote from a letter from the Bishop of Rome, Gregory the Great, in 604. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the very next Pope, Boniface III, he called himself the Bishop of Bishops, the Universal Bishop. Exactly that, what the Bishop Gregory the Great warns of. Anyway, continue on the bottom of page 512. So, on this score, the fulfillment of 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, we have no need for ambiguity. we safely answer the devil too is a great devil above all devils, and Satan is a great king above all the powers of hell. Said Paul, quote, there be gods many and lords aplenty, unquote. And Revelation chapter 13 verse 2 says of Antichrist, quote, the dragon, speaking of the devil as we know from Revelation chapter 12 verse 9, if I'm correct, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now in his letter to the Ephesians, Paul spoke expressly of this Antichrist devil compact, quote, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12. And for that I refer to you to the book of Ephesians chapter 6 verses 10 through 18. Put on the whole armor of God, that you are guarded with the right weapons for this spiritual battle that is mentioned in verse 12. Antichrist Pope John Paul II wrote a book which he titled The Pope, a Scandal and a Mystery. And it is by no coincidence that the Apostle Paul also warned about the, quote, mystery of iniquity, whose working will be of Satan, unquote, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. Well, in verse 7 he says much more than just this, right?
Yep, that's right.
He says, the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth must be taken out of the way, right? Something like that, Brett?
That's right. Yep. Revelation.
Do you have the complete quote there? 2 Thessalonians 2:7?
Yeah, I have in a second. Yep. 2 verse 7 is, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. Yes. And should I continue or just verse 7?
No. The point is that he may, the Tupper source here, I just want to say, that P.D. Stewart makes the point that this ends with whose working will be of Satan. This is not verse 7. This is another verse. It must be verse 8, right?
And then that wicked shall be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And then verse 9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. In verse 10, yeah, we continue. And then they perish,
so,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he should have made in the book the point clear that this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 7 through 10.
Yeah, I like the ending because it really nails it home. It says at the end of verse 10, it says, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause, God shall send them strong delusion that they might, or that they should believe a lie. Excuse me.
Well, in that strong delusion we are all living in this world today, right?
Yeah, sure is. Amen to that, brother.
Yeah, and the hardware is already installed. It's TV, movies, etc.
Oh, yeah, bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Michael makes a very valid point here. Makes a very valid point here because the power of the television, the power of the visual hypnotization of the people should not be underestimated, you know?
Oh, hey, look, I'm a musician and I love music, don't get me wrong, but there is a great deal of wickedness buried in there. And, you know, to each their own. I mean, we all have our own research to do here in this field, but I'm just saying you got to be careful.
Yeah, the point is, Brett, everything that is good can also be used for bad.
Yeah, that's right.
And with music, it's that because, you know, Lucifer was the angel of music in heaven. So music is a good thing. And we are to sing psalms in our heart for the Lord. Right?
Right.
Sing. Speaking of music, music is a good thing. But what Satan does with the music industry in this world, that is absolutely diabolical.
It sure
there's
is.
Nothing good about it.
Take something good and twists it, just like the scriptures. Same
it's
thing.
like, you know, I had this conversation, I think, with Victor in this Behind the Dictator very first chapter recording. about how, for example, television and movies and printing press and all that stuff is bad for us. And also the internet is a very bad medium, but it can be used for good and it can be used for bad.
That's true.
The internet can be used for good and can be used for bad. We are using the internet for, I would say, good purposes. When we use it to get together on Skype calls and do readings like books with Cold Word Babylon, or when we do a little bit later on today our Bible study or things like that.
That's right. That's right.
That's using these things for the good purpose. But there are so many people who use it for the bad purpose, who just use it to, do
all the dirty stuff. We don't even need to talk about it. We know what that is.
Yeah, okay. Let's not even speak about it, because it's just defiling our spirits.
Yes.
But anybody can go into his own imagination and think what bad you won't find on the internet. So that's a very, very important point. Yeah, the workings will be of Satan. The workings of turning everything that is good into bad. Yeah. Now
Comment.
the author.
Please go ahead.
Just a small comment, because he's referring to Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12, and if you read against spiritual wickedness in high places, it's just for me also the consciousness of the human race, because you see that every action demands demands a spiritual thinking before. You see, you have to think something before you can act. You have to
you got it.
And so if these demons can influence people by television, deceiving by false information, misleading them. Yeah, so you see the people cannot get act properly, and because they don't get the correct information. And so the first and for all trick must be to deceive them, to give them an ideology, and to hand over them that they think that they are thinking for themselves, but in fact it's just programmed information they got, like in the Matrix. And so I think it's a most powerful weapon the dark side got, is that they can educate the people by misleading them with wrong information, starting in the kindergarten and the school, etc., etc. Just wanted to get the things straight. And
what we call education, Michael, is just
indoctrination.
Indoctrination.
Yes,
indoctrination. Yeah.
Sure is.
Yeah. Okay.
Simple as that.
So the author continues and says, and Catholic Professor Keating and Cardinal Gibbons assured us that the quote-unquote mystery Babylon spoken of in Revelation chapter 17 was, quote, a code word for Rome, unquote. It follows, therefore, that if Babylon is a code word for Rome, then the mystery Babylon of Revelation is the same mystery of iniquity spoken of by Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 7. Do you shrink from this conclusion? Do not. It is the sober truth. The occultist Helena Petrovna Blavatsky is even more blunt. And by the way, Brett, I think that we read all this stuff already last time.
Okay, that's fine. I guess that's my mistake.
But a little repetition cannot hurt.
That's right. I like this anyway. This is good.
The occultist Helena Petrovna Blavatsky is even more blunt. She wrote in a satirically biting passage, quote, Roman Catholicism is but a name, a phantom of the pet and a mask, a mongrel religion, absolutely and indissolubly bound up with and fettered by the Society of Ignatius Loyola, unquote. May I also observe, and I beg that it be carefully attended to, that whatever can be said about Jesuitism applies equally to Catholicism, the two being but convertible terms, joined together like man and wife. The pagan Romans had a wise saying, quote, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion, unquote. The aphorism still holds true, yet, said Sarpi, quote, the Roman court will never condemn Jesuit doctrines, for this is the secret of its empire, a secret of the highest and most capital importance, unquote. Yeah, what we have to understand, when the Jesuits are swearing allegiance to the Pope, they do not swear allegiance to the Pope. They are not paying any authority to the Pope himself, but to the office of the Pope. That's why they killed many popes throughout history and are probably going to continue in the future to do that. They only swear allegiance to the office of the Pope, not the Pope himself. And the office, the person that is in the office of the Pope, speaking of the White Pope, is always from beginning. And you learn that when you read this book from Griesinger from 1866. The Pope is always under control of the Black Pope from the beginning. And there were many bulls, papal bulls made to assure that and to give the Jesuits that freedom, that carte blanche, that absolute power, even above the Pope. And when all these privileges were revoked by forbidding the Jesuit order in 1773 by Antichrist Pope Clement XIV, 113 years later, Antichrist Pope Leo XIII reinstalled all these powers, all these carte blanches to the Jesuit order in 1886. Do your own research on this and you will see that I speak the truth in this regard. There is no Roman Catholic Church without the Jesuits, and there are no Jesuits without the Roman Catholic Church. They need each other. The one needs the other. They are two arms of the same body, you can say. Now, the author continues to say in the book, indeed, it is clear that the last 500 years of the papacy's history cannot be separated from the political intrigues of the Jesuits. The geopolitical plans of the popes have always been in complete accord with those of the fraternity of Ignatius Loyola. Thus, we cannot escape the conclusion that popery, despite its pretensions, despite its pomp and ceremony, is nothing but a mockery and a mummery, a delusion and a snare, a scheming, skunking mystery of iniquity hiding behind the crucifix. And so, reader, we discover the key to the scandal and the mystery of the Pope in this little understood prophetic verse, quote, and the dragon, speaking of the devil, gave him his power, his seat, and great authority. Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. This is the secret doctrine, the mystery or inner Kabbalah of Roman Catholicism, the worship of two principles, that is to say, dualism. The French lawyer Etienne Pasquier summed it eloquently when he said, quote, it is in Jesuitism that we find revealed the mystery of iniquity through an examination of its doctrines, all of which are in full accordance with the canonical and long-held beliefs of the Roman Church. With this, we must, in all fairness, agree. We agree, too, with that part of the bull of Pope Clement XI, Unigenitus Deus Filius, of September 8, 1713, which warns against, quote, false prophets, especially such as secretly spread evil doctrines under the guise of piety and introduce ruinous sects under the image of sanctity, unquote. But in this, Rome condemns herself. For Romanism not only, quote, secretly spreads evil doctrines under the guise of piety, unquote, it has introduced numerous, quote, ruinous sects, Jesuits, sodalities, and other secret societies under the image of sanctity, unquote. Did not Lord Robert Montagu say, quote, the Roman Catholic Church is the largest secret society in the world, unquote. Oh yes, Lord Robert Montagu was so wise to say this sentence. It's absolutely true. Now you say, How can the Roman Catholic Church be a secret society? Everybody knows it exists. Yes, but have you ever heard of the inner teaching and the outer teaching? And that is what Lord Montagu meant. Everybody knows the Roman Catholic Church exists, but everybody, quote unquote, everybody, John Doe, the lay people, the normal man on the street, only knows the exoteric teaching of the Roman Catholic Church, and they do not know the esoteric teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why it is a secret society, because it keeps secrets from everybody. Esoteric teaching, that's what's keeping the Roman Catholic Church a secret society. Therefore, I can only applaud Lord Robert Montagu when he said, the Roman Catholic Church is the largest secret society in the world. We also agree with the said bull Unigenitus, where it condemns, quote, sects who introduce moral doctrines which are scandalous, pernicious, rash, injurious to religion, contumelious to law and the state, seditious, impious, blasphemous, savoring of heresy and schism, and erroneous, unquote. The irony, however, is that all of these are to be found in the quote-unquote moral theology of the Jesuits and the dogmas of Rome. Yeah, turn to Liguori and you get sick when you read about that. This we have already proved beyond any dispute. Thus, Rome condemns herself in the Pope's bull Unigenitus and answers fully to the old Latin proverbs Iniquitas menita est sibi. Iniquity hath lied to itself. And iniquity, it seems, is much pleased with her own lies. Writing in 1826, the Jesuit-educated Comte de Montlosier, a Catholic, gave this thunderous assessment to his church's secret work to restore its lost supremacy. Quote, a vast system. No, let us not mince words. A vast conspiracy has arisen against religion and society. I saw it in its first stirrings. I have followed its progress. I see now it prepares to crush us beneath its ruins. Unquote. We can count on this prediction of Montlosier with the accuracy of a calculating machine. As the Jesuit Edmund Campion bragged in 1851, quote, be it known to you that we have made a league, all the Jesuits in the world, the expense is reckoned. The enterprise is begun. It cannot be withstood. So the faith was planted, so it must be restored, speaking of the temporal supremacy of the Pope, unquote. He speaks in 1851. Those who still make a stubborn difficulty in believing these things should recall the words of Ignatius Loyola to his sons. We are called to win to God not only a single nation, not only a single country, but all nations, all the kingdoms of the world, with the Pope ruling with the dictatorship of a father. To achieve this singular goal, the Jesuits jobbed into office Hitler, Franco, Lenin, Marx, and Mussolini, and so many others, sons of the Catholic Church, disturbers of the public peace and enemies of all free states, to foment resolutions and bring Europe and the world to the edge of the abyss. Well, the author doesn't mention here Mao Zedong because I think he was a closet Catholic. What do you guys think? Wasn't Mao Zedong Catholic, the Chinese dictator?
I have no idea. Never looked into it.
Well, when you see, of course, what he did.
Yeah.
Speaking of how he killed millions and millions and millions of Chinese.
Sure.
I think that can only be the conclusion that he also was a Catholic. Not out in the open, but probably hidden. A hidden Catholic.
Say, I have a comment.
Yeah?
On this footnotes here. I was looking at these. There looks like a French title here on footnote 11 that I can't read. A celebrated pamphlet, Memorandum on the Political and Religious Systems Cited in Jesuits, a multi-biography. And it says here, the Jesuits have pledged themselves to the establishment of the Pope's kingdom on earth. Thought that was an interesting little bite there. But also there's a quote here from Cardinal Manning on footnote 13. And anything we hear of Cardinal Manning just makes me quiver because of his involvement in the church hierarchy and in his history. I really don't know very much about it, but I'll tell you, whatever I've read of his, just it's revolting.
Yeah, you were speaking about the quote dictatorship of a father.
Yes,
right.
That's correct.
This is cited by Cardinal Manning, the temporal power of the Vicar of Jesus Christ, and that was published in the house organ of the Jesuits itself, Civiltà Cattolica.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And we know Civiltà Cattolica as being an absolute diabolical publication of the Jesuits themselves.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So I'm going to continue in the next subchapter that is called Alperin V's Vatican Bank, Vatican's Nuclear Secrets. But I hear a protest. How, you ask? Can we say such things of the Pope and the Holy Catholic Church? Why do you still dispute these facts? The case of Alperin versus the Vatican Bank, cited in an earlier chapter, is proof, if any is needed, of the true nature of the papacy. A top-secret 1947 CIA document, never before declassified, surfaced in that case during a deposition. The deposition evidence in this long-running California federal court case revealed that the Vatican has been in possession of top-secret CIA document about nuclear weapons programs going back to the Second World War. The United States of America would have never developed the nuclear bombs if it weren't for the authorization of the Pope in the first place, right? And if you think that any American president really holds his finger to the button that can push nuclear war or not, then go back and study. The Pope, who considers himself the king of this world, will never give that power to any one of his legates, of his altar boys, I call them. They're all altar boys. Yeah?
Yeah, and just whenever you see the word CIA pop up, or the acronym, whatever you want to call it, you can immediately think of what they are, who created them, and who's behind that.
Who created them?
Yeah, CIA.
Wild Bill Donovan, Knight of Malta.
Right.
And Reinhard Gehlen, Knight of Malta.
Yeah, just think of the Knights of Malta. That's it.
And Reinhard Gehlen was the chief of the counter espionage system in Russia for Germany. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Reinhard Gehlen, Knight of Malta, and Wild Bill or William Donovan, also a Knight of Malta, they were the founders of the CIA. They founded the CIA out of the remains of the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services,
which failed. Yeah, World War I.
Which failed.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of history.
Yeah,
a lot of history.
But mostly just unknown.
Yes, exactly. Been covered up, and it's not common knowledge because this is esoteric. You know, you can't know this unless you really dig for it. That's the point.
You see, the average John Doe, for example, here in Europe, isn't familiar with the name Reinhard Gehlen. But on the contrary, you're telling about this is esoteric knowledge. I disagree, because you have only to look up Wikipedia to get this information. You see, so it's not a hidden fact that Reinhard Gehlen was the head of the Third Reich espionage for Russia, and it's also a known fact that he has been transported to the United States and he built up the CIA. So and he also was the founder of the German Nachrichtendienst, with the German intelligence service. So it's
what Wikipedia doesn't tell you, Michael, is that he is a Knight of Malta.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that he is Jesuit trained.
Mm-hmm.
That is what Wikipedia does not tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that make of Wikipedia? And listen, I often cite Wikipedia also as a source for things.
Mm-hmm.
But you always have to take into account that they never tell the whole truth.
Well, that's the real point. When I say esoteric, it's a teaching. We've been taught exoteric. We have not been taught esoteric. That's the point.
Exactly.
Okay, now I get your point. Okay.
Just real simple. It's not complicated.
But thanks for bringing that up, Michael. I mean, many people say, oh, Wikipedia, how can you trust this? No, you can't. You have to do next to Wikipedia other studies because they don't tell you everything. That's the point. It's nice that you brought that up here. Yeah.
I have to correct both of us, all of us actually, because in the German Wikipedia, it's the last sentence for Reinhard Gehlen in his family ties is Gehlen was the Knight of the Catholic Knights of Malta.
Yeah, that's right.
So it has been mentioned
it's
there.
interesting because, you bring that up to someone here in the States, Knights of Malta, and they just look at you like, what's wrong with you? Why would you even want to bring that up? It's like, yeah, it's incredible. The strong delusion is just so powerful.
Let me just respond to what Michael just said there. So, okay, the German article of Wikipedia says that Reinhard Gehlen was a Knight of Malta at the very end of the article. First of all, that's in the German one. Does it say the same in the English? That's not always the case, that in the English you get the same information as you get in the German. Second of all, there's nothing wrong with being part of a quote-unquote Roman Catholic papal knighthood. But the problem is that Wikipedia never tells you what these knighthoods are all about and what power do they have.
Of course not. Yes.
And that's the point that I am making.
That's
right. When you speak to the average John Doe, Michael, as you just said, and as I also quoted very often, and you say that he is a Knight of Malta, he says, yeah, okay, he was a Knight of this, he was a Knight of St. Gregory, he was a Knight of the Order of the Garter, he was a Knight of St. Gregory, or whatever. Yeah, that's just the papal knight order, but the people do not understand, because Wikipedia doesn't disclose that to them, the power that these orders have, and especially who is on the top. Because you can take all these papal knight orders together, and on the top there's one man whose work they are all doing, and that is the Dark General. I call him this case the Dark General of the Jesuits, the Black Pope. He is the one who gives the power to these people and to these orders. And that is what Wikipedia will never tell you.
Right.
And that's why you will only get half information from pages like Wikipedia. Nothing against Wikipedia in the first place. It's a good tool that you have that to research, but you don't understand the full complexity of a subject when you only do your research based on Wikipedia or other quote-unquote open sources out of the internet.
Yeah, it's
you will always be betrayed in the end.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad, but true.
And that's the only thing that I want to say. But Michael, that is a very good contribution that you are making. And I don't want to take anything away from what you said, but I want to tell you, you have to consider a little bit more. This is just like, and I know that you were offended by me saying that a few weeks ago, but I don't care. I told you that you have to think farther than your nose is long. And this is exactly the same thing.
I've got a long nose, you guys. I'm not joking.
Pinocchio's got the longest
My
nose,
brother-
you know?
Pinocchio, yeah.
My brother would always give me a hard time about your nose so long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I look
mean
pretty
this-
Roman, I guess.
I
huh?
mean this. I mean this in the most loving way, you know.
Yeah, and I know, and I can respond also because you see,
Please.
I did research, and my research, I think 1 or 2 years ago, before I even knew you guys, was about the SMOM,
Mhm.
the
Oh,
Sovereign
really?
Sovereign Military
Wow.
Order of Malta. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But stop it, because in the German Wikipedia, it's just mentioned as Sovereign Maltese order.
Exactly. They leave out the word military. Yeah. that's
Yeah,
right.
they avoid the name of phrase military. And in the English Wikipedia,
Wow. Is that
it-
right?
yes, you can look it up.
Incredible. Wow.
You cannot imagine how deceived how
Yeah.
they deceive the people, especially
Yes,
here in
it's
Europe
easy to
or
do.
in
It's
Germany,
easy to
especially. I
do.
don't know.
Oh, here in America too, brother. No
And
That's
problem.
why I just wanted to make the point,
No
Michael.
problem.
Do you have that mentioning of being of this guy? What we are just talking about, I forgot his name. Being a Knight of Malta in the German Wikipedia.
Reinhard
Okay, but
Gehlen,
Reinhard Gehlen, yeah. Do
Yeah.
you have that also in the English one? Because sometimes in the German there are given information. There's given information that is not given in English, and the other way
Yeah.
around. Like you just point out with the SMOM, Sovereign Military
Yeah.
Order of Malta. Absolutely right. In the German Wikipedia, I know that because I looked at that site many times. They do not speak of the quote-unquote military in the name, but they do that without any problem in English.
Yes, and that's the advantage if you are familiar with several foreign languages.
Right.
So that's true.
Right.
And in the English Wikipedia article of Reinhard Gehlen is mentioned honors, Iron Cross, second class, blah blah blah, and Grand Cross pro merito militensi of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. But it's
Just
just not.
But not that he's a member, right? That's a difference.
Yes, yes, and you see,
Mm.
I had studied so deep to get into your channel, because otherwise, if I haven't studied very deeply for any kind of matters, I wouldn't have come across your channel. Because you see, I was coming from the political point of view in the first place, and
Right.
then I
Me too, in
discovered
the
that it's
beginning.
all. Yeah, and so if you like to examine the esoteric and exoteric religion, then you can also compare the Red Cross and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, which are playing both sides of the coin,
Hand in hand.
hand in hand. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, hand in hand. So
That's correct.
I not want to go that deep into the matter, because I got the expression that every time I'm joining the reading club here, I'm we cannot finish any further because there are so many comments. But it's just
No, Michael.
There are so
That
many.
is of no concern. And
Yeah.
even if it would take us from here another 100 sessions to finish the book, it is not about the quantity of the uploads we are doing. It's about the quality, and it's
That's
about the
right.
things that we are saying. And this is information that needs to get out there. You know, there are so many
That's
people
true.
who say, well, I read this in Wikipedia, so therefore it's cut in stone for me. And they don't have an idea what Wikipedia actually stands about. And they don't understand the point that I just made to you, Michael, without, really, believe me, I don't want to insult you,
I don't
but
know.
without saying you have to think longer than your nose is long, because you have to think further. What is Wikipedia not telling you? On another level, everybody knows when he joins Prison Planet con artist, what's his name?
Oh,
Alex
yeah,
Jones.
Alex Jones. Yeah.
They all know that Alex Jones is not telling the whole truth. But
Yeah, or
you
to
have
some.
to put the same measurement on all the other stuff too. And to come to a conclusion of this SMOM subject for today, I just want to give the advice to everybody who wants to know a little bit more about the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. I did a in my eyes, wonderful
yeah.
broadcast in 2014, I think it was,
Yep.
and
with Michael
Nothing But the
Adams.
Truth with Michael Adams
Excellent.
for about 3 hours, explaining really the power of the SMOM, that they are a state, that the members of that have diplomatic immunity wherever they go,
Yeah,
that they have completely control over the world's finances, over the world's economics, and over the world politics. And of course, they are all under the guise of the Jesuits, and the Black Pope is the superior of it all.
Now,
And
excuse me.
therefore, they are part of the quote-unquote monolithic conspiracy that JFK spoke about in his Secret Society speech in 1963.
Yeah. And the SMOM also has a permanent observer mission for the United Nations.
Yes.
So,
Many people don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they have their own magisterium too.
Yeah, they have their own jurisdiction. Yeah,
They have their
cannot
own
be.
constitution.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very powerful.
They
And so-
are a state.
Yep, they are a state. A state within a state within.
Like the Roman Catholic Church is a state.
Yeah.
And people who do not understand that will never understand
Yeah,
that when you invite the Roman Catholic Church into your country, you are inviting a cancer. You are inviting a state within your state. And it's the same with these military orders, like the military order of Malta.
Yeah, and also you see the headquarters of the sovereign military order of Malta is not in Malta but in Rome, and also you have to look about this deception, because a military order like the Jesuit is a military order. What's the second commandment? A military order? How can it be Christian? A military order? That's quite the opposite. So it's it's dealing with the other side.
Sure. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
You at least got it. Now our our viewers and listeners to this video follow suit, I hope, to get it also. It's a very good point you just made. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just you have to look it up. If you are spending your blood for the Red Cross, they sell it to the state, making money, making profit. And the red was always the color of blood. And also the sovereign military order of Malta deals with blood.
That's right.
Because the sovereign military order of Malta also is connected, for example, to my knowledge, to Blackwater and to many elite soldier training units and so on and so forth. And so they're dealing with blood.
The color red goes back to the explanation of the Rothschilds in the Book of Rulers of Evil.
Yeah, also
the Rothschilds with their red
yeah.
shields, they have the same red shields as the Roman soldiers had, because red is the color of Mars. Mars being the pagan Roman war of God.
Yeah.
And red, biblically, is the color of sin. I think that's a good way to bring our session for today to a close.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting points, Jörg and Michael. And I guess that ends it for me, too. Do you have any closing comments, Michael?
I think I had them already.
Okay. Well, then we'll close it down for the day. And I hope everyone's doing well. And we'll catch up with you next time. Bye-bye for now.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order, which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things, aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.